From AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, this is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Laughbox, the official podcast of the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. My name is Chip Lutz. I'm your host, and today we have Amy it's so funny. Oestreicher with us. It was funny because I asked Amy beforehand, how do you pronounce your name correctly? And she said Oestreicher, and I was thinking Oestreicher. So then when I just went to introduce her, I went back to what I was already thinking in my head, but then I got it right. Amy's an award-winning actress, PTSD, peer-to-peer specialist, artist, author, writer, TEDx speaker. I mean, she's pretty awesome. So welcome, Amy, to Laughbox.
Hey, hello.
It's awesome to have you with us here today. If you could just share to our with our listeners a little bit about you, where you hail from.
Yeah, well, speaking of, it's about to hail here, I feel like. But I'm from Connecticut. And that's kind of where I've been. Connecticut, New York-ish, that area.
How's the weather been up there this season?
Crazy. I don't even know what season it is, to be honest. I mean, it was like 60 degrees. I couldn't get myself back inside yesterday. It was like snowing the week before. Today we're having like a thunderstorm. Yeah, going with the flow, I guess. I guess in New England we love our seasons, and we also love crazy weather.
Yeah, it's been pretty much the same in Wisconsin. It's like last week it was in the 70s. And then
crazy.
It got cold. Now it's just raining. It was raining all day yesterday. Like my yard is an absolute swamp.
Yep.
You have a really interesting story that you share in your TEDx talks and so forth. Can you share that a little bit with me today? A little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. My disclaimer is I know this is, for the Association of Humor, and even though my story might seem a bit crazy, I got through it through humor, and that's why I'm here. So that's my disclaimer when starting this. But I was kind of your typical teenage musical theater ham growing up. That was what I wanted to do. And then I was, violated by my voice teacher, and sexually abused as a teenager, which was something kind of very out of my, range of thought. And I completely kind of froze. And then, traumas just happened one after the other. The April of my senior year, I just developed a really terrible blood clot. I was just in a lot of pain. And that's all I remember. And then I just ended up in a coma that night. My stomach literally hit the ceiling of the operating room. And I was in a coma for months. And so I woke up months later. And, I had just gotten my college acceptance letters that week. I'd never been sick. So, imagine like waking up in a completely new reality. And the doctors tell me that, I don't have a stomach and I can't eat or drink, and they don't know if I'll ever be able to again. So, I was kind of arguing with the doctors, like what's going on? Like, why am I suddenly in prison? It was like waking up in the Twilight Zone. Thankfully, I was surrounded by my amazing family, and we kind of, people thought we were crazy because we tried to make our situation as normal as possible. And actually, all like the mimes and the therapeutic humor professionals that came to visit me in the pediatric ICU are forever in my heart, because that's kind of the spirit we all kept. My brothers brought their guitars and we sang, and they all thought we had ICU psychosis because that was our way of getting through, by just like kind of finding the joy. And I think that really helped me a lot. And also, I think because I'd always been so driven as a performer before all this, as a performer, all you want to do is make your mark on the world. And I think the biggest fear when I woke up was, oh my God, like I'm not going to make a difference anymore. Like I didn't want to be a has-been at 18. So I think that kind of like filled me with this, manic drive to just stay vital in any way I could. And so for me, my lifeline was really like creativity. I painted, I sang, I danced, I did anything that I knew I loved before this to make me feel like I was still myself. And so I was discharged months later because I was medically stable. But the one tricky thing was I still didn't have a digestive system. So I was sent home on, nutrition, IVs, and the doctors told me, like, follow up with us every now and then and we'll see what happens, but we can't make any guarantees. So, I was kind of left to my own devices in the real world where, people are toting water bottles and there are meals and real life. And I kind of had to make a functional life, in total uncertainty. So I found really creative ways of doing that. One of the things I did, I started a chocolate business because I really just missed going grocery shopping and I wanted an excuse to buy candy, and so, it was my way of being creative. I started musicals while hooked up to IVs. I started karate, and I discovered art by accident, like during my 13th surgery when I was, my wound exploded and I was stuck in the hospital for months. I started like collaging with toilet paper, and all of a sudden I discovered how much I loved creating art. And by the time I was discharged, I made 70 mixed media paintings, put up my first art show. So anyway, just really various ways of finding ways I could be creative. And that was my therapy because when I got to the hospital, my parents took me to see a therapist, but the therapist told my parents, like, she can't eat and drink. Like, I'm not going to make her sit in a room and talk about her feelings. Mm-hmm. And he was absolutely right. So I discovered creativity as this amazing container to experience what I was feeling in a safe way, to express those things so they could transform. And ultimately that ended up in a one-woman musical about my life called Gutless and Grateful, which was made from all of the thousands of journal entries I had written, to cope through all this, and some songs. And I premiered that in 2012. And for me, that was just, my intention was, what, I miss singing, I miss the stage, I'm going to put together a little cabaret act. What I didn't expect was that in the process of putting together this narrative, of my story, I was actually making meaning of what had happened to me for the first time. You don't go through trauma and, automatically find like the deeper meaning. What I learned is you actually make that yourself. And that's why that's kind of up to you. So, in creating like an arc of my story, I had finally kind of come full circle. And for the first time, like, I was talking about my story, which was a big deal for me. But even more like extraordinarily, the revelation was for me that for the first time, like in constructing this narrative of my life, it became like a universal narrative, like not just about, the girl whose stomach exploded, but a story of like overcoming obstacles and finding inner resources. And for the first time, people could actually relate to what I had been through. It wasn't just this inspiring or crazy news story. It was, it was something that was affecting people in different ways. So that inspired me to turn the show into a program that I've been touring across the country to help, other people share their story. And I think that's been the most rewarding thing, taking it to schools and traumatized populations and businesses and everywhere in between, because, the act of just telling our story, it can change us in so many ways, especially for people that they don't have a story, think that they don't have a story worth sharing, or think that, they're stuck in a situation that they have no control over. I should probably add I forgot to mention that I finally could eat after 6 years without food or an ice cube and 27 surgeries. Doctors finally reconstructed like a digestive system for me, which wasn't perfect. I mean, the reason it's 27 surgeries is because lots of setbacks along the way and lots of wounds opening and disappointments and all that. But the TED Talk I gave last year was about being a detourist, which I call it.
Let's go into that, because that's when I watched your TED Talk, it was very interesting to me. And then I want to go back to Gutless and Grateful on some of the different things you share in your show. So explain the whole detourist thing, to me, because I think it's an amazing way to look at things. Yeah, well, first of all, I started calling what I had been through a detour because it started from a place of need. Like, I didn't know how to categorize it. It's not like an official like diagnosis. I didn't identify with like the certain like illnesses I read about, and I didn't really know what to make of myself. And my path was really uncertain. So, I mean, the only thing I could think of was, okay, this is just not what I expected. But what was so beautiful about that term is, there's no stigma, there's no negative connotation, and it's also open-ended. And I ended up calling myself a detourist because, only years later when I realized that, every kind of twist in my path has brought me to new people, new experiences, and changed what I thought my life would be so completely that if you asked me now, like, what do you think you would have done with your life if this had never happened? Like, I couldn't give you an answer because, our detours, even though they're frustrating at first, they become our path if we're open to them and we don't push them away. So I started with the hashtag Love My Detour because I wanted to kind of like make other people see that it's not just that my stomach exploded. It's that I went through uncertainty. I went through anger and fear, like all the universal emotions you feel on a detour. Because like, I feel like where we all get into trouble is we start to swap war stories, and then we feel like we can't relate to anyone else's obstacle. Like, I don't feel like we should find the uniqueness in what we've been through, whether it's a divorce or breakdown or a lost job or an illness. I think if we all look at that as one detour, it's not minimizing what we've been through, but it's emphasizing that we heal when we find the commonality. And that's also where we find compassion. And I think we should find our uniqueness in actually what we do with that detour, not what's happened to us. I think that also gets us out of the victim mindset, and it makes us want to actively shape our detours into something of our own design. Right. It's funny, you said that, it keeps us from competing and sharing war stories, which, people are always trying to one-up you, but I don't think anybody can one-up you. I mean, I don't but even think of like the phrase like, well, you don't understand, or like, it's automatically shutting people out, and it's making people cling to what has afflicted them. But more than that, like, I think I realized firsthand that healing does not happen in a vacuum. You can do all like the self work like you can, but healing happens like when I did my show, like when I performed it and other people could resonate. So if we all look at it as detours, like we're all traveling it together, like we need that support. We're not going to get anywhere with this. I went through the hardest stuff. Right. Right. I like that, because I don't think, like I said, anybody could, if you're trying to one up people or you're going through, you wouldn't understand. When I was listening to your story, I was just like, I couldn't even imagine going through what you went through. I couldn't even fathom, one, having my stomach explode, but two, just the coma and the aftermath of it changing your life so drastically. But you know what the funny part is, though, at this point, like, I couldn't either. Like, and doctors would drive me crazy, to be honest. Like, so many times,
I could finally eat. And then I kept getting, fistulas, which are big setbacks after surgery. And they would think I was just like a faucet that could turn on and off. And they would say, just stop eating and drinking for a month and see if it heals. And every time I had to do that, I would think like, I cannot do this again. And even now, like, I don't know how I did it, but that's the point that I'm trying to show, that we don't really know what we're capable of until we're tested. And actually, I gave another TED Talk this weekend, which talks about similar things, but a very different concept. This is the concept that I talk about in my presentations a lot. I call them like my 4 hardcore skills to resilience. And what they are just 4 basic qualities that everyone has that I didn't realize how important they were until they were kind of pushed out at me. And so like I share them because I'm trying to show that, like, I think when we all see other people's stories, we're all like, oh my God, I could never do that. But why I'm trying to do this detours thing is also to prepare us, because prepare us in a positive way, because we don't know what life offers, unfortunately. But the fortunate part is we also don't know what we're capable of. So if there's one message that I'm the most passionate about sharing, it's that. It's like it's a preventative thing, but in a really encouraging way. Because like I said, like I could have never told you, I wasn't born like a martyr or anything like that. These were all kind of asked of me. My only I knew, the one thing I knew when I went through all of this is I don't know what's happening in like a week or a year, but I know that my only job is to get from day to day.
Right.
Like things like my dad would help me by saying, it's just take it one day at a time. The doctors said, first it was minute to minute. We didn't know if you'd make it. Then it was day to day. Then it's week to week. Then it's month to month. But if you just take it one day at a time, you'll eventually get there. And that's what the detours thing is. It's you don't have to see the bigger picture. You just, you're curious about the path, and you just take one step. And sometimes a detour is also just like staying in place, but you're open to everything around you. But it is okay to take breaks. Like I definitely want to emphasize that. Like it's okay to get really frustrated at everything, and that's more than normal. You need those feelings, but my thing is, find healthy ways to get that out, so you're not letting that eat away at you. Like get it out, get angry, and then get back on the path.
Well, what are some of those healthy ways that you get people to do that?
Yeah, so for me, creativity was like the biggest thing. Like it's easy to kind of get the misconception from everything I say that I'm a big champion of positive thinking, because I'm not. I swear, if one more person told me to put on a smile, I could smack them. Because it's true, because I became like the queen of like dissociation and like all the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, where to cope with not eating and drinking, I had to be very numb, understandably. So I got very good at pushing my feelings away. So in order to heal, it became even more important to find healthy ways of facing all those emotions that I had repressed, because the truth is they weren't going to all be happy emotions. After my coma, I also had to process my sexual abuse as well, and so there was a lot to deal with. So to say to wake up and just smile and say, I'm happy, I'm alive, I think I would have broken down eventually.
Right.
So for me, creativity was the best way to do it. And it took a lot of time, because for a long time, I just wanted to stay numb, because I realized that, oh wow, the good part about not eating and stuff and dealing with this was I could just work really hard to get through, and I didn't have to focus on all of these, yucky feelings that I haven't dealt with in so long. Mm-hmm. So that's when, once the physical healing was over, I really had the hard part. And, discovering art was such a well, hey, that's the biggest example of a gift on a detour, because I never would have discovered visual art ever if my wound hadn't exploded in California and I had to be air vaxxed back to Yale Medical Hospital, because I was stuck there for 4 months. And, you know, like I say in my TED Talk, my mom just started bringing art supplies to the hospital, and it was such a major discovery for me, because I remember the first day I just tried to pick up a paintbrush and I drew like this blue tear, and it was so simple, the act of doing that. But I realized, like, wow, like in just physically moving my hand around the canvas and just drawing the shape and not feeling the pressure to come up with words, like I'm feeling that sadness, but it's kind of being transformed on the canvas. So for me, that was my personal way. But I tell people, you know, creativity runs such a wide range. You know, it's song, it's music, it's movement, you know, lots of movement. You know, trauma is a sensation that is locked in the body, you know, and it's our job to find ways to physically get that out of us. You know, it's cooking, it's sharing, but it's any way you can find to get it out of you. The important part is we need to bring out all those negative feelings that we have on a detour. Otherwise, you know, they eat away at us and they'll hold us back, and we won't exactly be able to understand why.
Right. With your movement, lots of movement, it just reminded me of your Facebook Live video that you had. I think it was maybe last week or the week before.
Oh, and in Stop and Shop.
Dancing the Passover or singing the Passover song and you dancing in the aisle. That was awesome.
You like my song? You know what? I gotta say that's a quality I've had before this, and was my benefit after this incessant quality of shamelessness that I am, you know, I think that's why I'm so comfortable. You know, a lot of people like ask like, oh, how are you able to share all this? I mean, I've always been like a very open person, but that's really also what helped me, just being able to honestly, you know, share what I'm going through. But yeah, that includes just like dancing through the aisles of the grocery store
I think
too.
all of life should be like a musical. Hey, I've always wondered, you know, in musicals, people just burst out in song in the middle of, you know, a treacherous situation. Why can't we do that in real life? Why do people look at us like we're crazy when
I do. Actually, on a side note, if you Google grocery store musical, there's this group that just plans, like, they're like musical flash mobs. So that, you know, they plan it in advance, and then they just, you know, they rehearse this musical in a grocery store. You know, they film everyone looking at them like, what is going on? It's like one of my favorite videos. I want to do one of those one day. You
should do one of those. And let me know when it is, because I want to be involved.
Oh, totally. All right, I'm going to start it in Wisconsin.
I don't know how, if it would, like in vaudeville days, they would say if something could play in Peoria, it would play anywhere. I think that would play here in Wisconsin. I think everybody, they definitely.
Oh God! If you can also Google food court musical, and they do a fun one there too. Those are the only two I know. If anyone knows any others or wants to start one, hey, send me a note. I'll do it.
You're up for it.
I'm up for it.
That was great. I'm sure that you got a few views from people in the aisles like, what is going on over there?
Oh no, the truth is I go to Stop and Shop every day, so they all know me at this point, and they always look at me like, what the heck is she doing? Does she need any more food? I gotta say, after this, my sense of gratitude for food definitely never went away, and my favorite evening activity is going grocery shopping. It's not my wallet's favorite activity, but it's mine.
It's one of my favorites too. Well, our store here is the Piggly Wiggly, and I know everybody there.
Oh yeah.
Piggly Wiggly. I'm always.
Oh yeah, out in the West they have Piggly Wiggly. Yeah, that's when we go on. Well, I tour my show all over the country, but like my favorite kind of tourist things to do is like, let's check out the local grocery chains. Like in Denver, I'm like Safeway. Then we were just in Virginia. I'm like, Walla Walla. And people are like, let's see the monuments. I'm like, no, I want to see the Whole Foods.
Exactly. It's at the HEB.
Yeah. What is that? Is that something I should know?
The chain down in Texas is the HEB. So.
Oh, see, now, is anyone in Texas now? I need to book my show in Texas. On a side note, I book my own shows, so it's super simple to get me to come to you. I do schools, I do conferences, I do businesses. Yeah, and it's a good show. So book me so I can visit your supermarket.
That's a great marketing play right there.
Is that good copy?
So let's talk about that. Is your traveling show, that's Gutless and Grateful?
Yeah. It's again. I mean, again, that was such a huge, awesome detour because I really thought it was going to be a one-time kind of theater thing in New York. And, I'd never talked about my story before. And all of a sudden I was like doing it for total strangers and critics, which was a big move, but it was such a gift when I realized that, my story, could be translatable. So now that was 5 years ago. And now I've been touring it across the country, everywhere. I had no idea it would resonate with the college audiences, but it turns out it does because, college is a major turning point in our lives where, things change on a whim and, kids are coming to school not with not even having basic life skills or kind of freaking out under pressure. And I think they find it really inspiring. I do a talk back. Sometimes I lead, detourist workshops where we get to use all my favorite modes of navigating detours, which is like all these fun creative exercises. And I'll do team building for corporate companies. And that's so cool for me because I will see everyone as soon as I explain the detour concept. No matter who's in the room will just melt and people will start just sharing like crazy because something about the idea of a detour just breaks down all these barriers and there just becomes so much compassion in the room. So anyway, now I'm at the point where sometimes I incorporate my show with that, sometimes I don't, but I've been doing this musical for small classrooms, for theaters, for huge conference calls, which is my 70-minute musical comedy about my crazy life.
Did you write your own songs for it and everything?
I wrote 2 of the songs. One of them is also by Kathy Lee Gifford and David Friedman when I was on the Today Show, and the rest are just musical theater songs. And I'm actually working on a new solo piece with all my own original songs. So I'm also developing a ton of other stuff, which as an artist, I need to do for me. I can't tour this around for the rest of my life. But yeah, it's 70-minute show. I'm always starving by the end of it because it's usually the longest time I go all day without eating.
So how does that, well, because I'm curious. So after, and I'm just going to ask for the stomach and digestive, how do they fix that so you do eat?
Yeah, so I mean, the closest thing I can think of is that they made it kind of like a gastric bypass would be almost. Like they basically took whatever intestine I had left and made like a little pouch. So like I don't absorb everything, so I have to eat like 8,000 calories a day.
Wow. So
I'm like always eating.
I eat 8,000 calories a day, but that's why I'm a little heavier than I should be.
Yeah.
Because like you, my favorite thing is to go to the grocery store. I grew up a fat kid, so I wake up in the morning thinking about, what am I going to eat today? That's the first thing.
Oh yeah, it's the best thing.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. You're just a really an interesting person, but
interesting is the word.
Well, what I mean is that
totally.
You have an interesting story, but yet you have the energy that compels me to want to listen more. And I really think that
oh God, I don't know where I don't know where I get all this energy from. I wish I had less, because like I can't even stop myself.
That's probably from the 8,000 calories a day.
Probably, yeah.
Could be it, but you were probably like that beforehand too.
Yeah, the truth is I was.
So, a couple quick tips for our listeners on, things that they can help, easy things for them to implement on getting through their own detours?
Yeah, like I said, creativity was a huge thing. And it does not mean you have to be like an artist. It could really just be, we all need a way to express ourselves where we don't need words, because words can kind of trip us up sometimes. So even if it's just taking a piece of paper and doodling for a bit, or putting on a song, but a way that you can give yourself the headspace where you don't need to come up with the words. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, obviously, humor. That was a big part of my own recovery. And I talk about this as one of my 4 skills that, gratitude is a huge thing, but, I discovered that by accident in the hospital. I just started writing lists, and I made myself write something for every letter of the alphabet, something I was grateful for. And that was not just to think happy. I actually realized that in what I was writing, what I was grateful for were actually my values. And especially after so many medical setbacks, it reminded me who I was, under all of this. And I think that's the most important thing on a detour, that we have to remember who we are, because that will never change, who we are at our essence. So we need ways to get to that as a reminder, because it's scary when everything else, turns overnight. And again, that's kind of what I get into in my next TEDx talk. And that video will be live in May. So I'm excited for that.
I'm excited about seeing it. That'll be great.
Me too.
After today, if people want to find you, where do they go?
Go to my website, amyoes.com. And also you'll be able to see my TED Talk there. You can also learn more about my show. I'm serious. I'd come anywhere. So send me a note if you just want to know more about my show or see where I'll be next. Also, I have a book coming out at the end of next year. So if you sign up for, my mailing list, you can get updates. And also I give free inspirational stuff every week. And then the last thing is that I also have a column on my site, a weekly detour column where anyone can write in, including you, about a detour in your life and how it made you who you are. And I have almost 100 stories at this point.
Wow.
And what I love so much is they're all so different. And they could be even good detours. Maybe you found something, positive and it led you to something you didn't expect. But I love how they're all so different, but they all kind of, come together. And that's what I think the whole detour thing is.
Good stuff. Well, I've really appreciated spending some time with you today. You taking a little bit of time out of your schedule to share with us, share with me and the people that are listening. I would encourage everybody to go to Amy's website, check it out, look for her book that's coming out in December, I believe. Yes, December 2017.
Yep, but sign up for my list. Sign up. It's fun. You get free stuff. Yay. Yay.
And if you're interested in the association, go to our website, aath.org. Again, Amy, I really appreciate
it. Yeah, and I didn't even mention that I'll be presenting there.
Oh.
You didn't know? Yeah, so I'll be at the annual conference in April. So come and say hi and see my workshop.
I absolutely will. And I would encourage our listeners to do the same.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, this is a big redemption for me too, because I was known, when I woke up from a coma, I was pretty bratty at first, so I developed a very antagonistic relationship with the clowns that came in, because I was 18, so they would come in and go away. So I can finally have redemption and apologize, because I was probably very bratty out of my coma.
All right. Well, thanks again, and I will see you in April.
See you then. Thanks.
This is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Laughbox is made possible by a grant from the National Speakers Foundation and is brought to you by AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. Find out more at aath.org. Be sure to review Laughbox on iTunes. For show notes and more information about today's conversation, visit laughbox.aath.org.